Welcome to day 16 of Advent of Tess 2025. Today we're folding a pattern named Gridlock, and this one is very similar to yesterday's pattern. It has an open hexagon instead of closed. It has those same open triangles. It's got those closed trapezoids instead of open, and then those unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists on the back. In fact, it's so similar to yesterday's pattern that the outlines are exactly the same. The pleats leaving both of these sets of twists are exactly the same, which means that you can create patterns that are fusions of these two and other variations, which I find super fascinating. But that's a topic for another time. Today we're going to focus on folding. So I've got my 24 division triangle grid on a hexagon already folded. If you need help with your grid, definitely head to training.gatheringfolds.com/start, sign up for the full series, and you'll see a tutorial video there on how to fold these grids. And we're going to go ahead and dive in. Now, with folding a hexagon twist in the middle, I don't really need to mark the center because I'm going to do the same thing at each corner. And for the open hexagon twist, that's putting the mountain fold on the grid line one space above the right-hand corner, and the valley of that pleat one space above that. And we'll do this for all 6 of our corners. Oh, and fun fact, besides this pattern being special because you can mix and match with yesterday's pattern when you fold more repeats, day 16 is special for me because it's my birthday. So once we have those pleats on all 6 of the corners, with the mountain one grid line up from the right-hand side, the valley one grid line further, we'll have our open hexagon puffy star, and we can go ahead and press from the top to squash. From here, we're going to flip to the back side, and we're going to fold our open triangle twists with tube pleat spacing. So what this means is that our valley fold will sit one space out from the folded mountain. Our mountain fold will be one space further than that. And since we're folding open triangle twists, our third direction of mountain fold will outline one grid triangle. So I'll fold this by setting up the tube pleat. Call it a tube because it does in fact make a tube, and then find my third direction of mountain fold, making sure to put the valley fold on the side that is further from the central triangle. So we've folded a lot of open triangle twists already in the series, and I mean, given that we're folding unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists, I'm going to assume that you've already practiced the open triangle enough that that's a sufficient explanation. So from here, I'm going to rotate and put that tube off to my right-hand side and repeat and put in all of my triangle twists. So for this particular pattern, since each successive twist is on the opposite side of the paper, so the hexagon is on one side, then all the triangles are on the other, then all the trapezoids are back on the hexagon side, then all the mixed depth rhombi are back on the triangle side. We're going to go through and do 6 of the same twist, then flip the paper over, do 6 of the same twist, flip the paper over, do 6 of the same twist. So for this triangle, I'm going to be working on the bottom pleat of the tube. And this actually is important to get the sequence of the triangles the same. My new pleat coming out is going to come right under the corner of that open triangle twist. So with this sequence, as opposed to going the other direction around the central hexagon, we are going to set ourselves up for easier pleat overlaps to open on the other side. So I'm going to rotate that pair of parallel pleats to point out to my right hand side, and then find my tube pleat and my third direction of pleat forming an open triangle for my next triangle twist. Flatten and smooth out with the bone folder before rotating again. And this is where I start moving a little bit faster because we have seen these steps a couple times. And this is part of why the videos are recorded, so you can go back as many times as you need to catch all of these steps. So for the final triangle twist, I'm going to add in something a little different, which is a compound wrap. My new pleat, so I don't have the other pleat still folded in here. It already got used up in a triangle twist. One thing I can say is that the corners of these triangles are at the corners of the open hexagon hole. So the valley fold for this triangle will also come to the corner of the open hexagon hole. And this pleat down below is one that we haven't seen with these other triangles. What we're going to do is open up that bottom pleat and pop down so that our valley fold comes in, and instead of having that valley fold go straight through, like if I was reordering the pleat overlap, I'm going to have it bounce until it hits this valley fold of the pleat that we opened, and then bounce away. And this will also cause a little valley going out this way, and then the mountains are going to follow one grid spacing away, making these pairs of three-way intersections of mountain and valley folds that form our compound wrap. Now this isn't going to lay all the way down flat yet. We still need to set up the third pleat of our open triangle twist, but once that third pleat is taken care of, we can go ahead and press to squash the twist. Now I'm going to grab that compound wrap in my right hand as I flip the paper over, and you'll see I have some extra space here that I don't have in some of these other areas, particularly between these two parallel pleats. There's only 3 spaces. Between these two, there's 5. Everywhere else, there's 4. So I want to work on this area that has the most open space. And in particular, I'm going to be putting in my closed triangle twist so that I get, and here we can bring back the demo, I want this single space between the mountain fold bordering the open triangle hole and the next mountain fold. So here I'm going out 1 space, and I'm going to have a mountain through here. So this is my compound wrap. This is the overlap I'm working with. The 2 mountain folds of the pleat overlap plus this third that's one space away from the pleat at the edge of our lower triangle twist. And that's going to have a valley on the outside of it. Very thick layers in here, by the way. We just want to make sure that this valley is kind of wrapping around everything. That's going to be our lowest layer, because we don't want it tucked up under the triangle, really. So these 3 mountain folds, 1, 2, 3, are our 3 single depth, are the mountain folds of our 3 single depth pleats of this closed trapezoid twist. Then the grid line of that middle mountain fold is going to stay a mountain out the far side, and that's going to be our double depth pleat. So notice I took this and I tapped in here, and that let the whole thing rotate. So that's putting in a valley fold 2 spaces from the mountain fold that we identified. And it looks like a rhombus, but it's got that extra little leg, and that's what makes it a closed trapezoid. Like the rhombus twist, we can press from the top to squash. Now I'm going to go around and do this on all of my pleat overlaps, but here I have this other pleat coming in that looks like it'll cause problems. So I'm going to open up, open further, put in my 3rd direction of single depth pleat for my closed trapezoid, with the mountain 1 space away from this other mountain, both going around the hexagon in the middle. And with that in place, I'll find the mountain of my double depth pleat going out and identify my valley of the double depth pleat. Now I'm only drawing that valley 1 grid spacing because it immediately runs into this mountain from the previous trapezoid. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bounce down and make a 3-way intersection of valley folds. I'm going to have 3-way intersection of valleys also in here, and I'm going to have my mountain fold also bouncing 2 grid spaces away from the valleys. So when we had a single depth pleat crossing a single depth pleat for that last triangle twist, we did a compound wrap where the valley folds and mountain folds were 1 grid spacing apart. Now that we have a double depth pleat crossing a single depth pleat, we have our zigzagging mountains and valleys 2 grid spaces apart. And up here, you might be noticing like, oh, I only drew 1 3-way intersection of mountains. The other one is this mountain going into the twist, and this grid line coming out in another direction. And if I settle all those folds into place, then we have that same advanced compound wrap that we used yesterday that allows our closed trapezoid twist to stick out over this incoming pleat 2 spaces past where that mountain fold hits, which you could not do with a pleat overlap. And then I can press from the top to squash and fold firmly all the way through. So now I'm going to repeat again with this overlap, and the steps on that is open the overlap, put in the 3rd direction of single depth pleat. So that's the single wide spacing going around the central hexagon. And I'm finding my double depth plate that places my valley right in there. And then I can have the zigzag of the valley folds going in. It hits the mountain of this existing pleat. It zigs down to the valley, and then it zags out in the original direction. And then 2 grid spaces away from that zigzag of valley folds, we have a zigzag of mountain folds. And that gets us into position. And we can press to squash. Rotating around, I'll do exactly the same thing. Putting in my new single depth pleat, finding my double depth pleat, and then putting in my compound wrap over the single depth pleat from the previous twist. Once again, my instructions are getting faster and faster with each twist, but since this video is recorded, you can go back and see the instructions for a previous version at the level that's appropriate for you. Rotating again, I'll find my new pleats for the trapezoid twist, and this is going to be really thick in here, especially right at that compound wrap that we left for later. And I'll find my double depth pleat as well. And one of the things that I'm really noticing with this compound wrap is that this grid line really wants to be a mountain fold, but we need the grid line in this direction to be a valley. We can't let that side pop out. We need to let the valley pass through. And press to squash. And I will say that this process is definitely made easier by using Skytone paper, this paper that I'm using, because it's so crisp and it holds its shape and stays on grid lines, keeps the folds on grid lines much better than a lot of other papers. So rotating again, I'm working on closed trapezoid number 6. For this one, I'll open everything up, send my new single depth pleat down below, and this pleat sent down below, you could do it as an overlap. It won't add any new creases because the grid lines on the inside of this twist line up with the grid lines outside. But for consistency's sake, I'm going to put in that advanced compound wrap. So the way I did that is I took the corner of the twist and I opened up that mountain fold that was coming in here, and I pretended that there was still a mountain fold going straight up into the twist, and I split it into 2 different directions. And then I'm splitting the mountain fold again, 1 grid spacing away down under the twist. And that mountain fold is going 2 spaces until it's hitting the valley of this new single depth pleat that I'm putting in. And I can use that to structure where the valleys go underneath and get that advanced compound wrap in from the opposite perspective. Up here, we're going to do that same compound wrap, same way we've been doing it. Here it's just a little clearer that this is a three-way intersection because you still have that mountain going up into the twist, whereas down here we actually have 4 mountains and 2 valleys coming to the same point. So it can be a bit less clear down there. But if you're working with the printed crease patterns for this series, which you can get at gatheringfolds.com in the folding supplies, then you would still see printed the line going into the center of the twist. So from here, we have 6 more twists to add. We're going to flip to the backside and we're going to add in all 6 of our unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists. So to put in this twist, I'm going to open up one of these compound wraps and I see, okay, this is the double depth pleat. That is the single depth pleat. For these unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists, the mountain fold of the double depth pleat is going to continue being the mountain fold of the double depth pleat on the opposite side of the twist. For the single depth pleat, our new mountain is going to be 1 grid spacing away. So we're going to jump over 1 grid spacing in that direction. And then we keep the mountain of the double depth pleat, but the valley jumps to the far side. And so we're able to construct this unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twist with the caveat that on the other side, the corner of the trapezoid twist must be tucked under. We cannot have that layer on top because we get a conflict and it will not fold flat. So that has to be tucked under. And there is no ordering effect for these mixed depth rhombus twists. We can do each of the corners independently. You see, once this has been folded, we don't have anything interrupting any of the other pleats. Then there's a choice to make, an aesthetic choice of whether to hide the corner of that rhombus, that parallelogram technically, under the triangle twist closer in. That's a choice that I decided to take with this pattern for the base pattern. So you can see the crease pattern with more repeats in the Advent of Tess ebook for this year, also at gatheringfolds.com. But it's a purely aesthetic choice, unlike this trapezoid, which absolutely must tuck under in order for things to fold down flat. Then continuing onwards, we can open up the next overlap and I'll do exactly the same thing. So the mountain fold of the double depth pleat will continue through straight. The mountain fold of the single depth pleat will jump away from the valley. So it's jumping away from the valley, and then the new valley is on the far side. And in the repeating pattern, so in the version of this that I just showed that repeats, and getting everything in place, making sure it's nice and happy, then we can press from the top to squash. So in that repeating pattern, this rhombus twist functions as a position of twofold rotational symmetry. And that's a fancy way of saying what you see on one side of it, you also see on the opposite side. That's what's going on with these mixed depth rhombus twists in most of the patterns. Yeah, I'm going to say most of the patterns that use mixed depth rhombus twists use them in positions of symmetry, but not always. There's always exceptions. And okay, I'm about to get nerdy. If you look at all of the possible patterns that can be folded with origami tessellations, the proportion of patterns where these twists are used in positions of symmetry would actually be pretty rare, because with infinitely many patterns, you of course have infinitely many ways to repeat any given motif, and so basically I can say there are so many ways to repeat the center. Just ignoring the mixed depth rhombus twist for a moment, you could choose to have it be a mixed depth rhombus, or you can choose for it to be a threefold mixed depth hexagon. So with the rhombus, we had these trapezoids kind of running into each other. That's where the name gridlock comes from. With these guys, these big old stretched out hexagons, you've got these trapezoids side by side, passing past each other. Or you could have it be a twofold mixed depth hexagon in a position of symmetry, or not in a position of symmetry. You can really make the patterns as crazy as you like. All four of these patterns were actually designed during one of my YouTube live streams. I think it's the one that talks about different ways to finish patterns that start with a hexagon, then triangle, then trapezoid. I would have filmed it in 2004. It's almost certainly in the Fold More Repeats playlist. So all of those variations that I just showed of how to repeat the central hexagon, triangle, and trapezoid, all of those variations are in this year's Advent of Tess ebook, which you can get at gatheringfolds.com, origamiusa.org, or origamishop.com. All of those locations get you the same ebook. And there's so many cool patterns to fold in there. Like, we're on day 16. The coolest patterns are still ahead of us. There's actually 64 different patterns in the ebook for the 25 days of Advent of Tess, because there are just so many different ways to repeat these patterns. And that brings us to the end of Gridlock. So this is a very fun pattern to look at in backlighting as well, particularly with those dense areas, because when you start piling up the density, you get those very dark areas in the backlighting. And these unfriendly mixed depth rhombus twists also show up as very dark areas. So like I said before, the choice of whether to leave the tip of the rhombus out or not is an aesthetic preference. It doesn't actually even change the backlighting. It does, however, make the backlighting a bit more mysterious. And if we bring over these ways of repeating the pattern as well, see, I tucked all the tips. So these hexagon and triangle donuts just kind of floating around, connected by lifelines. And we've got these other versions as well. In case you're wondering, these other versions I've folded on 32 grid divisions. Then I don't remember how many grid divisions I used for this bigger one, but more than 64, because this is butcher paper and I only use that in larger hexagons than I would typically use. And from this side, got those groups of 3 mixed up hexagons that are just delightful flagstone motifs already showing up. We've seen a little bit of flagstone motifs with the rhombus twists, but actually getting some flagstone motifs in the alternate endings, in the hexagon, triangle, trapezoid patterns. Like it's like all the options are there. And if you'd like to learn more about designing with this kind of pattern in the center, the hexagon, then triangle, then trapezoid, I actually have a whole topic on that in Tessellation Academy, where we really dive deep and we see an example of designing something together. What effect do these different choices have? And basically the choices are, what size is your hexagon? What size is your triangle? Is it on the same or opposite side as your hexagon? What size is your trapezoid? Is it on the same or opposite side as your hexagon? And what orientation is it? And then, so that's already 6 binary choices. And then what mixed depth twist are you going to use to resolve things? Can that be on either side? If so, which side is it going to be on? And the choices go on and on. Is that mixed depth twist going to be in a position of symmetry? Yes or no? These choices lead to hundreds and hundreds of different patterns. So I hope you will go and explore. And like I mentioned at the very beginning, these two, so day 15 and day 16, exactly match up on the edges, which means that one of these could lead into the other. So that's a fun thing to think about as well. And starting tomorrow, we're going back to not having a hexagon in the middle, and we're going to do some patterns with triangle and trapezoid twists that are the same on both sides. So happy folding, and I'll see you there.